In the town of Ashwood, where the rivers flowed with an otherworldly silence, and the trees twisted towards the sky like gnarled fingers, the fabric of reality was unraveling. It began with small things: a missing cat, a broken vase, a forgotten dream. But as the days passed, the fabric of existence began to fray more visibly. Ava, a young woman with eyes the color of the darkest forest soil, felt the discord most deeply. She would wake in the dead of night, her heart racing, as if the very essence of balance had whispered a warning in her ear. She sensed the world tilting, like a seesaw, one end heavy with darkness, the other light with an unbearable brightness. In the local market, the vendors whispered of strange occurrences: a farmer's chickens laying eggs with shells as black as coal, a baker's bread rising with an unnatural speed, as if devoured by an invisible hunger. The townsfolk gathered in hushed clusters, exchanging worried glances, as if the very air was thickening with an unseen menace. Ava's grandmother, Alara, a woman with a wicked grin and eyes that twinkled like the stars on a clear night, was the first to speak the unspeakable truth. She sat Ava down in the small cottage they shared on the outskirts of town, the fire crackling between them like a restless heartbeat. "The balance is shifting, child," Alara said, her voice low and mysterious. "The threads that weave our world are snapping, one by one. We must find the source and restore the equilibrium, lest the darkness consume us all." Alara's words hung in the air like the sweet scent of decay, leaving Ava with more questions than answers. She felt the weight of her grandmother's words, like a burden settling upon her shoulders. The balance, a concept she had always associated with the natural world, was now a palpable force, threatening to devour the very fabric of their existence. That night, Ava barely slept, her mind racing with the consequences of Alara's words. She rose before dawn, her grandmother's words echoing in her mind like a mantra: "Find the source, restore the equilibrium." But where to begin? The town of Ashwood, with its meandering streets and crooked rooftops, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for Ava to unravel the mystery. As she stepped into the crisp morning air, the silence was oppressive, heavy with anticipation. The trees, once green and vibrant, now seemed to loom over her, their branches like skeletal fingers, reaching out to snatch the last wisps of sanity. Ava felt the world tilting further, the darkness gathering at the edges of her vision, like a slow-moving storm. With a deep breath, she set out into the unknown, the silence of the town swallowing her whole. The streets were empty, the market stalls shuttered, as if the vendors had abandoned their posts in the face of the growing unease. Ava wandered, her feet carrying her towards the old, crumbling mansion on the hill, the one place where the threads of fate seemed to converge. Rumors swirled around the mansion, whispers of dark rituals and forgotten lore. The locals avoided it, as if it were a cursed place, a magnet for the very darkness that threatened to consume them. Yet, Ava felt an inexplicable pull, as if the mansion held the key to restoring the balance. She approached the entrance, the massive wooden doors looming before her like the gates of a forgotten underworld. The doors, adorned with iron hinges and rusty handles, seemed to stare back at Ava, their wooden surface weathered to a grayish brown. She pushed them open, the creaking of the hinges echoing through the stillness like a sigh of resignation. The air inside was heavy with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. As she stepped into the foyer, a chill ran down her spine, as if the mansion itself was watching her. The walls, once adorned with opulent tapestries, now hung bare, their faded outlines reminiscent of forgotten dreams. A chandelier, its crystals dulled by years of neglect, cast eerie shadows on the walls, making Ava feel like an intruder in a long-abandoned world. Ava's footsteps echoed through the empty halls, each step a reminder that she was not alone. She sensed the presence of others, hidden observers waiting in the shadows. Her heart raced as she explored the dusty rooms, her eyes adjusting to the dim light that filtered through the grimy windows. In the library, rows of ancient tomes seemed to lean in, as if sharing a long-forgotten secret. Ava's fingers trailed over the spines, the titles whispering secrets in a language she couldn't quite understand. One volume, bound in black leather, seemed to call to her, its cover adorned with an intricate symbol that shimmered like the moon. As she opened the book, the pages crackled, releasing a faint hum that resonated deep within her chest. The words, written in an archaic script, danced before her eyes, each sentence a thread weaving a tapestry of forbidden knowledge. Ava's mind reeled as she read of ancient pacts, of balance and chaos, and the terrible cost of upsetting the delicate harmony of the universe. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness, the air thickening with an unseen presence. Ava's heart pounded as she sensed the threads of fate converging, the balance teetering on the brink of collapse. In the darkness, a voice whispered a single word, Arachne. The voice was a mere whisper, yet it sent shivers down Ava's spine. She felt the weight of the word Arachne settle upon her, like a spider's silken thread wrapping around her heart. The darkness seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling before her. As she stood there, frozen, the air began to shimmer, like the surface of a still pond disturbed by a thrown stone. The darkness coalesced into a figure, its outline indistinct, as if woven from the very shadows themselves. Ava's breath caught in her throat as the figure took shape, its features slowly solidifying like a wax sculpture in a furnace. The face that emerged was a labyrinth of lines and creases, a topography of ancient wisdom and hidden secrets. The eyes, two glittering orbs, seemed to hold the weight of centuries, their gaze piercing the veil of time. Ava felt the weight of that gaze upon her, as if the figure was unraveling the threads of her own destiny. "Who are you?" Ava whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. The figure did not respond, its gaze unwavering. Instead, it reached out a hand, its fingers like twisted roots, and pressed a small, ornate box into Ava's palm. The box, adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and writhe like living serpents, felt heavy with an otherworldly power. "For the balance," the figure whispered, its voice a sigh of wind through dry leaves. "The threads are breaking, and only the weaver's art can mend the fabric of reality." As suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, leaving Ava alone in the darkness. The box, still clutched in her hand, seemed to pulsate with an energy that both fascinated and terrified her. She felt the threads of fate converging, the balance teetering on the brink of collapse. With the box clutched tightly in her hand, Ava knew that she had to find the weaver, to unravel the secrets of the tangled threads and restore the equilibrium of the universe. But where to begin? The darkness seemed to whisper a single word, "Follow." Ava's eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she saw that the room had changed. The walls, once lined with dusty tomes, now seemed to stretch on forever, like a labyrinth of forgotten knowledge. The air was heavy with the scent of old parchment and forgotten dreams. She felt the box in her hand, its weight a constant reminder of the task ahead. With a deep breath, she began to move forward, the silence of the room swallowing her footsteps. The darkness seemed to shift around her, like a living entity, guiding her through the twisting corridors. As she walked, the walls seemed to close in, the air growing thick with an almost palpable tension. Ava felt the threads of fate converging, the balance teetering on the brink of collapse. Every step echoed through the silence, a countdown to the moment when the very fabric of reality would tear asunder. Suddenly, the walls parted, and Ava found herself in a vast, cavernous space. The ceiling disappeared into darkness, and the air was alive with the whispers of the ancients. In the center of the room, before the loom stood a figure, shrouded in shadows, its presence both ancient and eternal. "Who are you?" Ava whispered, her voice carried away by the whispers of the ancients. The figure did not respond, its gaze fixed upon the loom, where a tapestry of threads seemed to weave itself into existence. The threads, a kaleidoscope of colors, seemed to dance with an otherworldly energy, as if the very fabric of reality was being rewoven before her eyes. Ava felt the box in her hand, its power coursing through her veins like liquid fire. She knew that she had found the weaver, the guardian of the balance, the keeper of the threads. But as she approached the loom, she realized that the true test was only just beginning. The weaver's eyes, two glittering orbs, the weaver's gaze was a weight that pressed upon Ava, a challenge to unlock the secrets of the threads. She felt the box in her hand, its power coursing through her veins like a river of fire. The threads on the loom seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, as if they were alive, waiting to be woven into a new tapestry. With a deep breath, Ava reached out, her hand trembling slightly as she touched the threads. The moment her skin made contact, the room was bathed in a blinding light, and the whispers of the ancients grew to a deafening chorus. The threads began to glow, their colors shifting and swirling like a kaleidoscope of possibilities. The weaver's eyes never wavered, its gaze fixed upon Ava as if waiting for her to unlock the secrets of the threads. And then, in a flash of insight, Ava understood. The threads were not just random strands of energy. They were the fabric of reality itself. Every thread represented a choice. Ava's fingers danced across the threads, weaving a new pattern into existence. The room was a whirlwind of color and sound, the whispers of the ancients growing louder as the tapestry took shape. The threads seemed to come alive, vibrating with an energy that was both ancient and eternal. As she wove, Ava felt the balance shift, the threads of fate converging towards a new equilibrium. The room was a microcosm of the universe, and she was the catalyst for change. The weaver's gaze remained fixed upon her, its eyes burning with an intensity that seemed to pierce the very soul of reality. And then, in a final, triumphant flourish, Ava completed the tapestry. The room fell silent, the threads ceasing their vibration as the whispers of the ancients faded into the distance. The weaver's gaze released her, and Ava felt the weight of the box in her hand. The weaver stepped forward, its features shifting like the shadows on a moonlit night. For a moment, Ava saw a glimmer of a face, ancient and wise.